Okay, in this next set of video we're going to talk about the back layer cards a little bit. So look, back layer cards is basically a separate card bonded to the back of the invitation. So these, we have a whole bunch of these digital invitations that are back bonded. It's not a very popular thing, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. But whilst we're discussing the papers, back paper bonding is available for something like $1.50 Australian each to add to the existing card to make the card a little bit thicker, a little bit more sturdy. So say the customer wants to print a digital invitation in full color on any of the paper stocks, it's completely fine, and we can add this extra thickness of the back layer card to make it a bit more solid, a bit more sturdy. So for example, especially with these nice invitations here, these are pre-foiled invitations. They're quite nice, but you'll find once you receive a sample, they're a little bit thin, a little bit flimsy, so some customers are concerned with that. Then we can offer basically with any invitation card that's a square size like this, we can offer a back layer bonding option. Now, you might need to just confirm with a support staff, which invitations because our back layer cards are certain sizes. So, most of our invitation sizes are the same size, as you can tell, so you can easily, obviously, bond the back papers to these, but it may be worthwhile to get a product code and confirming that the back bonding can be done to whatever invitation they choose. Obviously, we can't go offering back bonding for, some of these cards that are completely different, random, they've got enclosures, etc. So those bonding is obviously only available for flat cards with 4 square corners. We have a whole bunch of colors for these back layer cards, but since they're not really popular, we don't send out samples of these. So we have different sizes basically come in different colors, and I think we have most colors available. So what you need to get is just ask the customers what color they're looking at, and then we'll find a sort of closest solution. I'm going to document the back layer color options anyway in my document. I don't want to spend too much time on them. That's not something that's very a popular thing to do anyway. Ultimately the most important thing for you to understand and things that you get asked a lot is guest name printing. So in this video I'm going to go through a little bit more details to explain to you how guest printing is done, guest name printing. And so that you understand why some can, why some cannot have the guest names printed. Although if you head over to the website, they'll tell you guest name printing is available or not available. Every now and then this information is not correct, and every now and then we can actually print guest names where it says otherwise. And I'll be able to show you that. So that you'd be able to figure out by yourself if we can do guest names or not. Now, not all the time can you do this. Sometimes it's a little bit confusing, and even our staff has to ask our production manager if we can do it or cannot do it. Obviously, if it says on a website we can do it, then we can. But I just want to dedicate this next 5 minutes in this video for you to understand the guest name printing. So the guest name printing essentially is again done with a digital printing, very similar to printing the insert cards of these. So whenever we print the guest names, the printing of the entire invitation will be flat. So it's not just the guest name component, it is the entire wording, the entire text, everything will be completely flat. Now the guest names can obviously be easily printed on these type of invitations. When we have 4 square corners, they go through a digital printer. We feed it through, and it's just printed just like your everyday, photocopying printer machine. So if you apply that logic, you'll be able to figure out which ones we can, which ones we cannot print guest names on. So if I look at this set of invitations here, because they have they have an edging, or they have a foiling, or they have some pre-printed information already before, we can't take a sheet like this, insert it into a printer and print the guest names because of a whole bunch of issues like moving the actual text. It's just not possible. So with these type of invitations that have pre-foiled or pre-stamped or created special finish or element, it's safely to assume you cannot print guest names on them. So customers will have to give up that option there. Having a look at this invitation, for example. So this again, it's a bit tricky because it's an imported card. It doesn't have any imported information on the back. But if you look at the shape of this, you can safely assume again that this is not a square shape, so it's not something you can feed it through your digital printer. Yeah, it doesn't have the edges to grab on. It's got a custom shape. It's got a folding inside, etc. So you cannot feed this through into a digital printer. Therefore, you cannot print guest names on this, and also you cannot change colors of this. Not just because it has some sort of pre-printed chandeliers on it or whatever. Because of the shape of the paper, you cannot physically print color, so you can't change the insert color of this as well. Although doesn't appear to be an imported card, it actually is, and it's not one of our premium ranges. And because the shape again is in a square on all edges, you cannot print guest names. Now, if you look at these other sort of indie cards, imported cards, so you'll see that this card we have the name and the details of the invitation printed directly on the card. Again, there's no way you're going to feed this through a digital printer. To print the guest name, there's a variable data. So variable data stands for printing information that varies from one set of wording to next, which is essentially what guest names are. They are variable data. So because there's no way you can feed this through the digital printer, you can't print guest names on this type of invitation. Now there is an exception if the customer is very, very keen on printing the guest names on this type of invitations. We can sometimes, and this is for not all invitations, and in my documentation I have listed which one of these pre-made indie cards you can actually upgrade to put an insert paper into this invitation, and therefore print the guest names onto the insert paper. So if you look at this next set of imported indie cards that have a separate insert, either card like this that just sort of loosely is inserted, or the actual insert paper is attached to the outer enclosure. Because it's a square paper, it is a doesn't have any special finish on the insert paper, so this is obviously a separate piece of card. You can also assume that we can print guest names on this. Yeah. So the only way that we could print guest names on something like this is to attach a separate piece of insert paper like this inside that invitation and hand assemble it. There's obviously an extra cost for that. I will document that in my knowledge base for the product information, so that you know that, for example, this invitation we can actually print guest names. With the customer needs to be clearly explained, either via chat or email, that the only way to do that is by inserting a separate piece of paper and printing on that, such as this paper.